Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Boy, does it smell good.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
That's good.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio, this is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Thursday. Things are brought to you by Rouse's Markets. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. Fired up. You were hanging out with us as we're working towards the weekend. Lots and lots to do over the next couple of hours. Going to talk about LSU's basketball loss last night a little bit later. Joe Healy from D1 Baseball's SEC Extra Team will be with us for the first of his weekly visits. We'll chat with Joe every single Thursday about what's going on in the Southeastern Conference. Couple of teams heading over to Globe Life Park where LSU will be in a couple of Tuesdays to start their seasons with a big-time tournament. So we'll talk to Joe Healy about that. And I think, based on what I just looked at on my Twitter feed like 5 minutes ago, that South Carolina's Friday night guy might miss extended amount of time. That is not good news for Paul Maneri out there in Columbia. We'll talk baseball with Joe at 1:30. Alex Bregman's got a new deal. We got to talk about that. Luke Johnson, usually with us in hour number one. He's got some work to do. Kellen Moore just met with the media down there in New Orleans about 20 minutes ago. So Luke's got some of that to take care of, and then we'll chat with him at 2 o'clock when he's kind of gotten settled, but should be a lot of good information there from Luke. Chris Blair, Voice of the Tigers at 2:15, and then we'll talk about Jay Johnson and Cade Anderson at 2:30, who will take the baseball 25 hours from right now over at the box when LSU and Purdue Fort Wayne get their season underway. But we're going to start with some football the same way we start every single day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
So there's some news hitting the internet streets, and all you got to do is head over to LSU's official website and look at the roster. Juwan Johnson is listed as a quarterback on LSU's current roster. And for all I know for sure, some intern over there at Sports Properties or at LSU Sports Information may have put the information in incorrectly. And maybe this is not real, but all indications are that it is. And if you connect some dots with LSU's current quarterback situation, it does make some sense. But here's my take on this entire situation, if in fact Juwan Johnson is moving to quarterback full-time. Yes, as of January 1st, you were looking at an LSU quarterback room that had Garrett Nussmeier returning, that had Colin Hurley returning, that had Michael Van Buren coming in from the transfer portal, and was missing A.J. Swan and Ricky Collins. So you had three scholarship quarterbacks, Nussmeier, Van Buren, Hurley. And that's light, but it's not completely out of the ordinary in this day and age where quarterbacks transfer at a rate more frequently than any position on the field in any collegiate sport. So that's light, and then Colin Hurley gets into the car accident. And he's now away from the program. He's recovering in Jacksonville at home. And you've now, as it sits today, in the middle of February, you've got two scholarship quarterbacks. Now, an NFL team would just go to the practice squad and sign one, or they'd go out and make sure they got one off the street. And you don't really have that option in college football. Like, there is another transfer portal window. Maybe you can add one there. But it may be that they're moving Juwan Johnson there to be the third quarterback. And that, on its face, makes a ton of sense because Juwan Johnson is quite literally the most productive high school quarterback in the history of Louisiana. He set state records with 14,451 yards and 171 touchdowns accounted for at Lafayette Christian. He led his team to 4 straight state title game appearances, breaking records set by Brock Berlin back in the 90s. So he makes a lot of sense. Well, who's a quarterback? How can we find a quarterback? Well, look at this guy. Nobody's been more productive at quarterback than him. And Juwan Johnson has already shown this year that he's so athletic and so adaptable, he can shift positions. Because we went out to watch fall camp all of August, and he backed up Major Burns at the Star all of August. And then the first game of the season, boom, you get an injury to John Emery. And the next week, we find out Juwan Johnson's working at running back. And the next week, He went out against Nichols 5 days after switching positions and caught 3 passes and scored a touchdown at running back when he had been playing defense his whole time in Baton Rouge. That is incredible. And we talked about it. And it shows how naturally gifted he is with the ball in his hand. But to me, moving from safety to running back is one thing. Moving from another position to Southeastern Conference quarterback is a whole nother one. And I believe that while, for all the reasons I laid out, this makes sense on its face, that this is a detriment to LSU's 2025 football team. Now, why do I say that? Because Juwan Johnson was a 4-star recruit, one of the top athletes in the country, and you felt like he was good enough to step in with the twos at safety immediately. And then he went to running back and looked like he could help you there. It feels to me like Juwan Johnson is a good enough football player to help LSU chase a championship in 2025. Can we all agree that LSU is attempting to chase championships in 2025? Southeastern Conference, playoff, national championships. I'm not telling you they're going to win it. Can we agree they're setting up to chase it? I think Juwan Johnson's a good enough athlete to do that at either running back or safety. I do not believe, under any circumstance, that Juwan Johnson is a good enough quarterback to lead LSU to championships. Said another way, if Garrett Nussmeier gets hurt and Michael Van Buren gets hurt and Colin Hurley doesn't rejoin the team, and you've now got a situation where Juwan Johnson has to play quarterback, LSU's season is toast. That's how I see it. So to me, trying to fill bodies at quarterback just because you don't have enough and potentially compromising production in another position in case the worst case scenario happens is not positive for LSU. Teams on their 3rd string quarterback, in this case 4th string quarterback, don't chase championships. Save me the Cardale Jones example. It's a fine trump card to play. I've got a century of history that suggests it won't look like that. John Trey Kirkland was a ridiculously productive quarterback in his high school days. He threw for 7,500 yards in high school. He had a month to prepare to play quarterback against Kansas State, and until the last play of the game, he was 6 of 10 passing for 57 yards against Kansas State. Not apples to apples because LSU had half a roster, but you get the point that I'm looking at there. You watched Anquan Bolden try to go out there in the Sugar Bowl, and that's not going to work. You watched Denver, who had 4 COVID quarterbacks against the Saints, try to wide receiver out there, and it didn't work. When you get that many quarterbacks hurt, your season is cooked. So trying to mitigate those losses with a body, to me, doesn't help. Now, here is the counterpoint to that. I've made my stance pretty clear. I think we can all agree on that. I don't like this move. I'll be okay with it if one of these things is true. If he's actually a running back, but he's going to work at quarterback in the spring and they might put a package in for him, I'm fine with that. Perfectly fine. I wouldn't change his bio on the website for that, but that's fine. He's a great athlete. You want him to play some running back, maybe get a few snaps at the Wildcat, great. If you think that Juwan Johnson can't help at running back, it can't help at safety, he's not good enough to help at either one of those positions. We've added people. We've added Harlem Berry and JT Lindsey, and we've got Caden Durham and Caleb Jackson, and you look at safety, and we've added Mansour Delane, and we've added Tamarcus Cooley, and we've fortified our secondary and our running back spots, and we don't think he's good enough to play either of those positions, so we're going to put him as the emergency quarterback because he theoretically could help us in the worst bind ever, and we're not compromising either of the other 2 spots. If you think that's the case, fine. But if there is a chance that Juwan Johnson could really help in the 2 deep at safety and or running back, and you have him as the scout team quarterback who's being called on an emergency because 3 other quarterbacks were compromised and couldn't play, that is wasting an asset to me. That's what I think. So this is one of those situations where we are speculating a little bit, but my stance on this is pretty clear. You've got an uber-talented guy who should be able to help, and if he's the 3rd string quarterback, in this case the 4th string quarterback because one of your guys is not with the team, that to me is a waste. So we'll find out from Brian Kelly when he meets with the media prior to spring football, which is coming up here in a couple of weeks. And I'm sure that he'll be asked about this a significant amount. And I do not mean this at all as a slight to Juwan Johnson, who is such a dynamic player. But he falls in a line of dozens, not exaggerating, dozens of LSU players who were uber productive high school quarterbacks that really helped elsewhere. This is not even close to the whole list, but I'll just toss some out there that a lot of you are aware of. Early Doucette, Corey Webster, Ruben Randall, Kendall Beckwith, Spencer Ware, Russell Gage. The list goes on and on and on about guys who took snaps in high school but helped LSU win games at other positions because that's where their athleticism took over. Do you know how hard it is to play quarterback at a championship level? I'm not asking you if you can have Juwan Johnson go out there and beat Nichols. I'm talking about playing Alabama. I'm talking about playing Texas A&M. I'm talking about going to the playoff and playing Clemson again or Michigan. You think that it's reasonable to expect Juwan Johnson to go back there and function against that? 5-star Elite 11 quarterbacks buckle under that stuff. It's hard to do, especially when no one thought you were going to do it in college. Sure, he could have gone to Southeastern and played quarterback. This ain't Southeastern. I think he's going to help. He should help at safety or running back. That is my 2 cents on the issue. It's potentially an overreaction, but I feel like it warrants a reaction. So if you'd like to read some more of my thoughts on it, you can do so at louisianasports.net. That's our Genesis opening drive here. GenesisofBatonRouge.com. Beck, you've listened to this kind of diatribe here that I've got. I think most people see this news and they look at this and they go, oh man, look at this. We've got a guy that's super athletic. This could be really fun to sit here and watch him play quarterback for LSU. I personally don't think that's a good idea at all. But I'm curious kind of what you think about any idea that you could have Juwan Johnson, who is a high school quarterback, show up and try to play quarterback for LSU in an emergency. I think that sounds like a disaster.
Yeah, it does. And I know we talked about Juwan Johnson a little bit last year, and I got to see him play in high school, and he is an incredible athlete, as everyone has seen him in action. You can tell he's a really good athlete, but he didn't really show much in the way of being a quarterback capable of diagnosing defenses and breaking down just different situations. So I agree with you. I don't see how having him in the quarterback room is going to help your team overall. I think he'd be much more helpful playing defensive back or running back.
All right, agreed. I feel like I might be in the minority on this, but
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, he has his stats are impressive from high school, but we have seen plenty of guys that have been able to rack up stats in high school playing quarterback or running back, and it's not necessarily if you watch the film, they're not throwing 20-yard ins or outs. Like they're not making these incredible throws. Not to say that he can't make good throws, but he if you watch his highlights, he wasn't really making throws. He wasn't
playing for the pocket.
Yeah, exactly. He wasn't making plays that make you think this guy could be a quarterback in the SEC.
We'll see. Brian Kelly will probably talk about it coming up when spring practice begins. All right, let's take a timeout. We still got to talk some baseball. We'll do that with Joe Healy coming up in 15 minutes. Chris Blair is going to be with us as well. We'll have some sound from Kellen Moore potentially, and we'll talk with Luke Johnson. Lots of that coming up on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets.
Chugging right along here, Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. We're presented by Rouse's Markets. We are squarely in king cake season, carnival season, if you will, but king cake season in this instance. Rouse's has got you covered for all your king cake needs. If you got one that you want to bring out to a parade, bring to a Mardi Gras party or a ball, or just want to have it on the kitchen counter or at the office, Rouse's has got you covered. Walk in any of their locations and generally right at the front. Certainly Burbank and Lee, where I spend a lot of time, was there yesterday. They got king cakes for days right when you walk in. They've got the cinnamon traditional right there on the left. On the right, they've got all your flavored options. I like the flavored options, strawberry, blueberry, cream cheese, whatever the case may be. I enjoy that more. I like a traditional cinnamon, but I'm a flavor guy. They got you covered there. They're going to make 600,000 of these things during carnival season. Go get you one at Rouse's, wherever is your local location. Rouse's, where it feels like home. LSU basketball did not win last night. They lost 70-58 in Bud Walton Arena. Victorious Miller hit a three right before halftime. Nice set that LSU drew up out of a timeout, buried it, and he took a halftime lead. But then the offense was completely anemic in the second half. You only scored 23 points after intermission. Arkansas outscored LSU by 13 in that instance and won the game by 12 to drop LSU to 1-10 in Southeastern Conference play. I'm not going to go too deep into the weeds here. I will say, if you watched this game, and I'm sure a lot of you did not, but if you watched this game, Robert Miller was better in this game than he has been at any point at all this season. Like, better in this game than any point during the non-conference. They were throwing the ball down on the block to Robert Miller, who's been pretty much MIA all season. He generally would play 5-6 minutes, get 2 rebounds, have a foul, 0 for 1 from the floor or something. He was going to work on the block on a front court for Arkansas that's in the top 10 in the country in block percentage. And he was just getting his buckets. He was going off the glass, getting to the rim, using pump fakes. His footwork was good. I'm sitting there watching this going, where did this come from? It was completely out of nowhere. I cover this team probably closer than anybody at this radio station. I don't even think that's a stretch in any way, shape, or form. And that may be a detriment to this show, quite frankly. But I can't help it. And I've watched him all year. He hasn't really done anything. And he was just in the zone last night. Nobody else was any good at all. Nobody else was any good at all. Jordan Sears, Jai Bailey, and Cam Carter combined to shoot 6 for 23 from the floor. That is 26%. LSU, as you well know, has no chance when those 3 guys do that. LSU, who got to the free throw line 28 times against Arkansas in the first matchup, made 26 of them in a win, got to the free throw line 6 times total last night and missed half of them. They did take care of the ball better. They only turned it over 9 times, but in doing so, they got a lot more shots and couldn't make them. They were 39% from the floor and 25% from three-point range. And that 25% from three-point range, oh, by the way, Cam Carter made 3 of LSU's 5. The rest of the roster was 2 of 13 from the three-point line outside of Cam Carter. Just no rhythm, no flow to the offense in the second half whatsoever. It was a little bit puzzling that after a decent first half, well, I shouldn't say, he was out there early in the first half, made a 3, and then Victorious Miller in the second half just kind of blah. Like he played 10 minutes. No, sorry. He played well. What I meant to say was he played well. He didn't play as much as I thought he would play. He was 3 of 4 from the floor in the second half. He made a 3 right before halftime, but he only played 10 minutes in the second half. LSU went with the veteran guards, and they didn't necessarily do a heck of a lot. Miller's not a great defender. I get that, but didn't play as much as I would have liked to have seen. Outside of Robert Miller in the second half, LSU was 5 of 20 from the floor. Just nothing offensively. And then we told you yesterday in the brief 3 minutes that I did on this team in this game yesterday that Zvonimir Ivisic, Big Z. Zvonimir, whatever. Ivisic. I knew I was saying that wrong because they didn't put the R on the box score. I was like, that is not what I remembered. But I'm going off the box score. It's as good as I can do. Zvonimir Ivisic, he's been great for them since Boogie Fland went down. And Boogie Fland is a point guard, and Big Z is a 5. But they've kind of run through him, and he was awesome last night. 10 of 13 from the floor, 3 of 5 from three-point range at 7'2". He scored 25 points in the game and kind of dominated the scoring for Arkansas. They only had 3 guys in double figures in the game. John L. Davis had 11 and DJ Wagner had 10, but Big Z was awesome. And what really hurt LSU was at one stretch in the game, LSU completely went in the deep freeze for 4 minutes. And when that happened, Arkansas was in the middle of a heater that was when they hit 8 of 9 shots, and LSU never recovered from that. The Tigers fell behind by 8 and cut it to 6 at one point, but it was basically living around 10 from there on out, and there's just nothing LSU could do to get anything going on the offensive end of the floor. So it was a game that was predictable and that LSU probably wasn't going on the road to win, but you had beaten Arkansas previously, and you did play a good first half, but LSU just, they don't have 40 minutes of basketball in them at this point. They had 37 on Saturday. They had about 10 the week before that on a Wednesday night, and then against Texas, they had none. And you don't really have a second punch to throw here. Like, you got a season best game from Robert Miller, and the rest of the team stunk. In the same way that against Ole Miss, you played 37 good minutes and played 3 terrible ones, and they're just not good enough to get over that hump. It's a brutally hard league. Arkansas is not great, but they're playing better. They've now won 4 of their last 6. And LSU just kind of looks like a team without a rudder at this point, and that's how you get to a 1-10 record. I was talking earlier today about this basketball team, and I'll just go big picture briefly, and we'll put basketball in the rearview mirror for today. But it's unacceptable for LSU to be 1-10. Like, that's not an acceptable output on a campus that has the women's basketball team in the top 5, and the softball team in the top 10, and the baseball team in the top 5, and the football team in preseason top 10s, and, you know, gymnastics winning a national championship, and women's golf having the best player in the country, and this athletic department is thriving, and LSU's basketball program is not. And there are reasons for that. Some are LSU's fault, some are not. But this team beat Florida State, who's very much middle of the pack in the ACC, and beat Kansas State on the road soundly, who's very much middle of the pack in the Big 12. You couple, I shouldn't say couple because it's more than 2, but you group in the fact that LSU is playing without 2 guys they were supposed to count on, and is playing in the hardest league they've ever played in, and you get this product that is significantly worse than the rest of the SEC. And the only way to fix it is to care more. And I don't know what makes that happen. I don't know who to go to force that to happen. But right now, it's kind of the stepchild of the athletic program, and that's evident when you watch and you go into the PMAC for the games. And that breaks my heart, because y'all know how much I like LSU's basketball program. And there are lots of you who are listening to me who cannot wait to get to my LSU baseball segment today. And we're locked in as I was talking about Juwan Johnson and the football program in the last segment. But I go to basketball and you're just like, when does this end? And I get it. But that's the point. Like, it feels like everyone feels that way. And when that's the case, this is what you get. And it was just another dismal performance last night in the second half that led to another win. The losing streak is now 7 in a row, and you play Oklahoma on Saturday on the road. They're playing better. Then you got South Carolina at home. And if you don't win that one, you're staring right down the barrel of 1-15. And that would be last, because South Carolina would have the tiebreaker over you even if they didn't win another game. So that's where LSU is right now, and last night was not all that fun to watch. What's another 8 o'clock tip-off? Can we please throw a 6 o'clock tip at them at some point? Would be much appreciated. It's not coming next week either. But Tigers lose in Fayetteville. Let's talk a little baseball. Joe Healy, D1 Baseball's SEC Extra team, going to join us when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is that website. I know a lot of you don't love the idea of going to a car dealership. You feel like it's a pressure environment. You're getting upsold. You're not getting the honest treatment that you deserve. I understand that. Decades of that stereotype perpetuating itself have led to this. But you don't have to go to the dealership at Genesis Baton Rouge. If you do, it's a phenomenal experience. The facility is first class. The staff is exceptional. But you don't have to go. You can do your shopping online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. They've got pictures of every single car that's on the lot. And once you decide what you might want to get behind the wheel of, you contact Genesis of Baton Rouge. They come to you at the house, at the office, wherever the case may be. You get behind the wheel, go for a test drive with one of their brand ambassadors around the home or the office. If you decide that's what you want, e-contracts, delivery, it's all yours. And with that new purchase, a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty, because that's just the way they do business at Genesis of Baton Rouge. They're on airline at PQ. If you want to go, I highly recommend it. But if not, they're online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. Genesisofbatonrouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets.
Box Stadium tomorrow, different time on tomorrow's schedule, noon to 2 for the Hunt Palmer Show tomorrow, as LSU and Purdue Fort Wayne will do battle at 2 o'clock. So that means our schedule for tomorrow off the bench will be their normal 7 to 10. Then you'll have live at lunch from Rufino's from 10 to noon, up to their Football Friday kind of schedule, or their start time at least. And then I will come on from just outside Alec Box Stadium from noon to 2. 2 o'clock first pitch. Matt will be on with AFR during the game from 2 until 6, a 4-hour edition of After Further Review. All season long. Last year we had our guy Joe Healy on 2 years ago as well, and happy to do it for a third year in a row. Of course, Joe with the team over there at SEC Extra with D1 Baseball. Joins us now on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Joe, there may be some folks in the Southeastern Conference casually late to baseball this year because they're maybe chasing the Final Four in basketball. The Tigers are 1-10, so you have our full attention in this market if you were curious.
You beat me to it. I was just gonna make a joke about you don't want to talk about men's basketball. You can do that too if you want, but not a moment too soon on the baseball front.
It'll be packed tomorrow. They are really excited for some baseball down here. And I want to talk about LSU a little bit, but I'd also like to kind of dance around the SEC as we get into opening weekend. A couple teams taking on some real challenges this weekend. But let's talk big picture with some of the perennial heavyweights in the Southeastern Conference. And we start with Tennessee, the national champs, the defending national champs. We know Blake Burke is gone. We know that Christian Moore is gone. Do you feel like Tony Vitello has restocked the shelves there in Knoxville and they should have a team that can chase another title, or is there potential step back like the last three national champs have done?
Yeah, there's a potential for a step back, but we tentatively are pretty bullish on them. There are two teams in the rankings. One is Tennessee, one is LSU, where if it weren't for the fact that they didn't have the names they have on the front of the jersey, if they didn't have proven head coaches in the dugout, we'd probably have them ranked a little bit lower. But there's just a belief that, with Tennessee in particular, guys go there and they just get better. Like, they bring in transfers that are superstars. They have guys in the roster, whether this year it's Dalton Bargo or Reese Chapman or take your pick. They're probably going to have some guy who's been on the roster who hasn't really stood out, who all of a sudden becomes a all-SEC type of player. And pitching-wise, Frank Anderson might be the best in the business in terms of getting the most out of the pitchers they have there. So not everything has gone swimmingly. They've got some injury concerns. A.J. Russell is in that group of folks that have some injury stuff going on. But we just have a high level of confidence they're going to figure it out. I think Dean Curley is maybe a guy that's poised for their step. Can he become maybe an SEC Player of the Year type of guy? Andrew Fisher, who's on his third team in 3 years, but like the guy mercenary he might be, the dude produces. So like he's probably good for 20 home runs. So I think they'll get it figured out. I do have more questions on the mound, if I'm honest. I like Liam Doyle at the front. I think he was probably undervalued last year at Ole Miss because the ERA is not great, but his peripherals were great. Beyond that, though, a lot of questions there. But again, in Frank Anderson, I trust in terms of figuring it out on the mound. So we're just going to roll with it until we find out otherwise.
Speaking of figuring out on the mound, Arkansas always dead sad. It's generally a matter of can they hit well enough. What do you think about Dave Van Horn's team this year? Yeah,
it's funny. In the offseason, we've talked so much about Arkansas's offensive struggles, not just you and I, but everybody I talk to that brings up Arkansas. And, they go into the portal and it feels like their fan base is screaming, can we please get a slugger? And then Arkansas's coaching staff is like, can we interest you in another left-hander? Because they just kept bringing in portal pitchers. And look, the talent on the mound is absurd. Like I think it's probably the deepest pitching staff in the country in terms of guys who have done it at a high level. But then you look at the offense, and look, I like this group better. I like Brent Iredale, the Australian kid who's a JUCO transfer. A fully healthy Kendall Diggs, I think, is a big deal. I've gotten lots of good reports on Vahiva Aloy, their shortstop, who put up good numbers last year. So I do like this group better. But then you stack it up against so many of the other teams that we think are going to be elite in the SEC, and you kind of look at it and you shrug. So, look, the formula can be, if their pitching staff is as good as we think it could be, and their offense is middle of the pack in the SEC as opposed to, 13, 14, 15, that can be an Omaha team that could challenge for a national title. But if they have injuries on the mound, if some guys just don't, make the step up to the SEC as well as we think they might on the mound, and then the offense is just kind of what it typically is, or at least has been the last few years, they are susceptible, I think, to just kind of being a team that's been where Arkansas has been the last couple of years, which is they look great at times when the pitching is going well, but the minute the pitching sags a little bit, you start to look around and wonder how else this team can win games.
I saw a little piece on the Athletic earlier this week that polled 10 current college baseball coaches, and they were asking for the best arm in the country. Gabe Gackle got 2 votes, and then Root, the transfer in, got a vote as well. So 2 different Arkansas pitchers were thought of as maybe the best in the country, which is not uncommon for what Dave Van Horn does up there in Fayetteville. I'm springing this on you a little bit, and I'm not sure if this has crossed your radar, but I don't think it's too deep for you to dive into. I just saw on Twitter that maybe Caden Sorrell over at Texas A&M might miss some time, and then Eli Jersenbeck from South Carolina, where Paul Maneri will start his tenure tomorrow, could miss extended time as well. Either of those significant for those 2 teams?
Jersenbeck for sure, because when you look at South Carolina's team, and this has largely been true even the last couple of years with Kingston. You look around and it's like, okay, there's some nice depth pieces on the mound, and oh, by the way, I still think that's true for this team. But they don't really have a dude that you can put on a Friday and say, hey, let's go out there and beat Ryan Prager, for example. Yeah. Like they don't have that guy. Jersenbeck could have been that guy. When he was a freshman 2 years ago, his first 30 innings or whatever it was before he got hurt were borderline electric. It's a fast arm. It's an elite fastball metric. The breaking stuff was coming along. Like he just checked every box. And so to not have him is a huge blow for South Carolina. And I don't mean to be overly worried about it necessarily at this point, because we just have so much baseball to play, but I worry a little bit. And I know there's still a lot of folks down where you are that still have a lot of affection for Paul Maneri, even if maybe it just ran its course at the end. I worry a little bit that there's a chance the bottom really falls out of it at South Carolina this year, and it ends up being a situation where he takes on more blame than maybe he deserves, and then the fan base just never buys into it, because there already was a decent amount of skepticism about that hire. And so I worry about that a little bit. And I think this Jersenbeck injury could really play into that. Sorrell, nice player. I think a lot of people thought he could have a breakout year, but man, that A&M roster is just so deep that, yes, it would be nice to have him, but I don't think it's necessarily going to throw them off course.
Well, this is a big year for Ole Miss, obviously. They've not been very good the last couple of years, and they're not exactly easing into it. They'll be at the Shriners Children's College Showdown in Arlington. They'll play number 21 Arizona tomorrow. They'll play number 19 Texas on Saturday. They'll play number 15 Clemson on Sunday. I saw, this is rare for me because I'm not nearly as into the weeds as you are in January and February. I recognized all 3 of the announced starters for Ole Miss. And on one hand, I went, well, that means that these are seniors who were not drafted, but it also means they're very experienced. Where do you land on Ole Miss starting 3 seniors who have been around for a while on their first weekend?
Dude, when I tell you, yeah, I am in the weeds. And then when I saw that, I was like, huh. Like these are 3 guys who have been around. And I guess intellectually I knew that they were all still on the roster, but to see them boom, boom, boom with Hunter Elliott and Riley Maddox and then Mason Nichols was just kind of jarring. So, but I think you've hit on something here that I think is the exact point about Ole Miss. If they are a postseason team again, or this year as opposed to the last 2, it's going to be because that rotation turns out to just be really, really good. It's not the sexiest rotation. Like Mason Nichols and Riley Maddox, their stuff is just fine. Hunter Elliott's obviously a little bit better. We saw him pitch in Omaha as a freshman. Like there's a little more high end there, but if those 3 guys are just what you'd want out of senior pitchers, I do think that could lead Ole Miss to being in a situation where they make the postseason again, but they're going to have to be that good. They've got some younger arms that are promising, but, if you look at Ole Miss the last couple of years, one of the kind of original sins that's put them in this rut is just they've really struggled with pitching development. in terms of guys that were dudes or thought were going to be dudes as freshmen and sophomores just don't necessarily make the leap. And we'll have to see if this ends up being the case with Maddox and Nichols in particular, because they're asking them to do things they haven't done, which is be real guys for them. And, and Elliott's just kind of more about, is he the same guy we saw 3 years ago? And we won't know that until we get into the teeth of it. So I am more optimistic about Ole Miss than I was last year, but I still have to be honest, I still have a hard time seeing this being a regional team. I'd love to be wrong about it because it'd be a cool story, but I just struggle a little bit with seeing it right now.
Forgive me because I listened to the first two legs of the D1 Baseball podcast. One, you had one of them, and one, Runes had one. It was Bianco and Schlossnagel. I can't remember which one was which, but I did listen to both. Schlossnagel seemed to kind of downplay the talent, especially in the pitching staff. He got A&M figured out real quick, and they got to Omaha and made some damage. But did it sound to you, if you heard that, or if that was your interview, that it felt like he was maybe downplaying the talent level with the Longhorns this year?
Yeah, that was my interview. And I kind of got the same vibe. And it's just so hard to tell if that's sandbagging or if there's something real there, I will say I like the floor a lot because the position player group is really, really good. I think the coaching staff did a nice job for whatever criticism you want to hurl at Jim Schlossnagel, and there's a lot of valid ones based on what happened in the offseason. But the dude wins and the dude puts good rosters together. And the fact that those players stuck around, I think, is a testament to them understanding this is Texas. And now we have a proven head coach who, is just coming off of leading A&M to what's one game of a national title. So the position player group is so good that I do think it controls their floor a little bit. I have a hard time imagining that thing bottoming out or being kind of shaken a little bit. But yeah, the pitching is where I'm kind of interested because they're leaning on a guy like Luke Harrison, who has been hurt the last 2 years. And, Ruger Riojas is going to be one of their most important relievers. And he was a nice pitcher at UTSA. That's kind of, he wasn't like a prospect or someone who people thought this is an SEC level guy necessarily. So they are, kind of working with some new pieces there. Jared Spencer, the transfer from Indiana State, who's had his own injury problems. So it's not really the pitching staff you'd probably want to be going into the SEC with, but again, until I find out otherwise, I'm going to assume they're going to get something out of it. It just might be the kind of season in Austin where A, they're going to have to win their fair share of 9-7 games. And then B, it wouldn't shock me if, they're that team that plays 4-hour games with 6 pitchers per game and, 12 different guys start a weekend game at some point. It really wouldn't shock me if that's the case. That
was Jay Johnson's first year in Baton Rouge. He had a lot of really good hitters, and they had about 4 pitchers they trusted, and that's kind of how they tried to operate. I know you're going to watch a ton of baseball this weekend, but you can't watch every single pitch, obviously. When you pull up the LSU box scores on Sunday night, what are 1 or 2 things you're going to be looking for from LSU this weekend?
Well, I think the first thing is you want to see the pitching staff, which I'm bullish on, by the way, with the starting rotation, even though they're not SEC battle tested quite yet. I want to see them kind of cruise through these lineups. You can only gain so much from the level of competition they're playing, but I want to see them be healthy, be efficient, because you really got nothing to lose in these games, right? Those offenses can't really hurt you. I hope these aren't famous last words. Those offenses really, really can't hurt you in a way with the stuff they have there. So go attack, be efficient, try to maximize the number of innings you get to throw, because obviously we know pitch counts this early in the season are going to be a thing. So that's 1. And then 2, where does the help for Jared Jones come from? I think it's going to come. Obviously Stephen Milam's coming off a great year. I think Danny Dickinson, really high, dude can really, really hit. So we can go on and on, but we know what we're going to get with Jared Jones. Who is the second fiddle guy there? Is it another step from Stephen Milam? Is it an incoming transfer? Is it a Jake Brown who's coming back and trying to do a little bit more? Obviously, they're not going to see SEC level pitching this weekend, but does someone emerge and do something that we maybe haven't seen them do that maybe sets the table for, here's the guy who's going to be alongside Jared Jones being an all SEC type of hitter?
If you're looking for your baseball content, the written word there, D1Baseball.com's SEC Extra Package, and of course, Highway to Hoover with Joe Healy and Mark Etheridge. He'll be with us every single Thursday moving forward. Joe, enjoy the baseball tomorrow. We'll talk next week. Thanks.
Yep, thanks, Hunt. See you.
He is Joe Healy. I always enjoy those conversations. I know that, it's baseball, kind of unlike football and basketball. A lot of fans go in pretty blind to what everyone else is doing. I think everybody that's an LSU fan really has a handle on what LSU is doing because we cover it so extensively in the fall and now in the preseason. But I like to kind of sprinkle some things here and there with the rest of the conference because I expect LSU to compete towards the top of it, and we kind of talked about some of the teams there that should be in the same mix. So we'll see how things shake out over the weekend for a lot of teams in the SEC. I'm very interested to see how Ole Miss gets off to in their start here because Mike Bianco needs things to go well this year in Oxford. We'll come back and close out the hour with a Rich Tiger on Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Audio Video Security Solutions, avssla.com. Just got a text within the last 20 minutes from a fellow Baton Rouge media member. Said, I need Mitchell Fisher's cell phone number because we got to get something done at the house. And I, of course, obliged with Mitchell Fisher's cell phone number because it's a phenomenal company to work with. It's a local company, and the customer service is second to none. If you want Mitchell Fisher's cell phone number, here it is, 225-439-7920. 225-439-7920. He's the owner of the company. He's your point person. He's right there on the picture on the website that Cassie's scrolling through right there. And for us, when it was to putting in our security system and handling all of our televisions and the wiring, Mitchell was there with his team the entire time. And if we ever have any issues, we know who to text. It's a phenomenal organization, and the customer service is truly second to none. You can do big business with the big box stores, or you can do business with someone local who's going to be able to be available for you. It's Audio Video Security Solutions. You can check them out online at avssla.com, on Instagram at avss_BR. That's Audio Video Security Solutions.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets.
Closing up hour number one here, brought to you by Rouse's Markets. We're back at Rouse's Markets the spring of last year. It was the spring of last year, and Alex Bregman was debuting his line of hot sauces and seasonings. And he can keep doing that if he wants, but he didn't really have to because he just signed a contract that could be worth $120 million over the next 3 years. A lot of that money is deferred by the Boston Red Sox, and there are opt-outs involved. So we'll see how long he plays in Boston. But his time as an Astro for now is very much done. And I think that is emotional, I think, for a lot of you LSU fans that are big Astros fans as well. What a cool thing for one of the great players in LSU history to be the second pick in the draft by the Astros and then get up to the MLB as quickly as he did and then be a part of 2 world championship teams. I think a lot of folks may not realize this. Alex Bregman has the most postseason home runs by a third baseman in the history of Major League Baseball. That's loud. I know we've got more rounds now, but still, those are high leverage spots against really good pitchers. And Bregman has delivered time and time and time again.
It also helps that he's played 99
that
playoff
helps a lot.
games.
That helps a lot. But nobody says that Derek Jeter is a fraud or that Yogi Berra is a fraud because they got to play in a lot of postseason games. That's true. That Andy Pettitte guy, pretty good as well.
Yep.
Got to play in a lot of playoff games. And look, Bregman has done that. The run that Houston has gone on in terms of reaching ALCSs has been incredible. And he's been right there in the middle of it as you've had Correa and Springer move on, and he and Altuve have been there, and you had Verlander there, and then he wasn't, and then he was, and it's been an amazing run for the Houston Astros and for Alex Bregman. And when you take a player that early in the draft, you hope they blossom into a superstar. And Bregman was absolutely a star in his time in Houston. He's 31 years old. And the Astros kind of made it known that they were going to go in a different direction. That's why they didn't make an effort to re-sign him, really, and they traded away Kyle Tucker, who's probably their best player, to the Cubs. they were ready to reset this whole thing. And Bregman had his opportunities and chose Boston. So I talked about it yesterday on the show. Like, I wasn't wild about the Cubs spending $140 million, not because I don't think Alex Bregman is worth $140 million, because I know what the Cubs ownership group is about. And I know that if they spend that on Alex Bregman, they're really not going to spend anything else on anybody else. So I was a little hesitant, but I'm thrilled for Alex, and he gets a chance to play for an iconic organization in a ballpark that's a perfect fit for him. He just leaves one place with a very short left field porch and moves to another place with a very short left field porch. He's got monster numbers in his career in Fenway Park, and that should continue. I don't know if he's going to play third or if they're going to leave Rafael Devers there and they're going to move him to second. I think
I think I saw that reports are that he will be playing second.
But he's a guy that just won his first Gold Glove. There hasn't been a significant drop-off offensively for him there. What he's like at 32, 33, 34 at the end of this deal remains to be seen, but I think it's great for him. It's a great opportunity at a great organization, and I know there's a lot of people down here in South Louisiana and in the Houston area who loved watching Alex Bregman in Baton Rouge, have loved watching him in Houston, and are sad that time is up. But all good things generally come to an end, either when Father Time wins or the purse strings of the ownership wins, and in this case it was the latter. And you wish Alex the best. It's awesome for him. He can now get ready for spring training. I was curious how long it was going to go, but this is where that merry-go-round stops, so he'll head to Florida in spring training with Boston, and the Astros will reset and try to figure something else out as they move forward. So congrats to Alex Bregman. Awesome run in Houston. Pair of World Series championships, another huge payday for him, and also an incredible ambassador for LSU as well. So hat tip to Breggs for that signature. All right, that's it for hour number one. If you missed anything, catch it on demand, 1045ESPN.com's On Demand tab, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you find your sound, you can always find us. I open things up talking about Juwan Johnson and his move to quarterback. Good thing, not so good thing. You can find that at Hunt on LSU on YouTube, wherever you find your podcast. LSU Hoops loses. Joe Healy talks SEC baseball. A lot to do in hour number two as well. Luke Johnson, when we come back from Sports Center, talking Kellen Moore presser, Chris Blair, and Kate Anderson. All that coming up on The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.